Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me today I have, make sure I pronounce this right, Carridwen, and you are a chaplain.
Yes, I'm a chaplain with the Department of Corrections.
Okay. There's so many different things we could talk about today, and I'm sure we'll be doing other episodes as well. But to begin with, I guess, we talked around a bunch of different ideas beforehand. The one that came to my mind the most as I was pondering it over last night was just, to begin at square one. Someone who has wound up in the correctional system, and they have a lot of different stresses on their mind. It would seem to me the last thing they want to be dealing with right now is someone trying to convert them to another religion. Certainly there are needs for some sort of spiritual guidance, some sort of reassurance, the sort of ministry that a chaplain does. Trying to persuade someone that they need to be a Christian at the same time would seem to me to really complicate dealing with the situation.
Well, in fact, it is against the rules with the Department of Corrections for anyone to proselytize.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that there aren't people in situations who forget that. And so there is some level of pressure. For one thing, most of the programming is provided by Christian volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go to the programming, there it is.
And I'm sure we're thankful for the volunteers.
Oh, absolutely.
But,
and the programming, because any programming is better than no programming.
Yeah, but there is a certain sensitivity that should come along with it.
Absolutely. And by law, it's supposed to. And there are very few cases of blatant proselytizing. It's generally much more subtle.
Okay.
Like, for instance, an inmate coming to one of my programs might be when they're let out of their unit to come. The unit officer might say something like, "Why are you going to that? That's not."
It's placing a value judgment on a particular...
It's placing a value judgment of any kind.
Yeah.
And even mentioning it, even saying anything about it, it's not appropriate. But people are people, and they don't always act
Well,
in
and
the
I
best.
don't know that too many people consider subtle things like that to be as injurious as they might be.
Well, the inmates will come to us and say, "Officer so-and-so just said, what are you doing that for? That's like you." And so the inmate is feeling judged,
Mm-hmm.
and they've already been judged,
Mm-hmm.
and now there's more judgment. And yet,
how much judgment does a person have to deal with?
Exactly. Well, when we were first taking our volunteer training, the teacher we had, who was a very good volunteer trainer, said, one thing you need to remember, and everyone needs to remember, they are here as punishment, not for punishment. Okay?
As punishment, not for punishment.
Their
Say a little bit more
sentence,
about that.
their sentence was a span of time.
Okay.
That is their punishment. Removal from society for X span of time.
Okay.
Not, I personally want to make your life miserable today. And I think that should be done up in little cross-stitched samplers all over every prison in the world, because there it is. That is their punishment. Doing time is their punishment.
Yeah. We don't need to add anything to it.
No, exactly. We should be, and that's why staff in the facilities are called corrections officers, not guards. They are here as part of the process of rehabilitation, or for some people, habilitation.
Mm-hmm.
And it is up to staff, and they're trained with this, to be exemplars of normal,
Normal, healthy,
yes,
respectful relationship.
yes, that we hope that these inmates would learn from and step up to.
Mm-hmm.
So every person on staff is to some extent part of the program of let's get you in a better place so that when your time is over, you perhaps are better equipped.
Well, and without digressing for the moment into how well does the system itself work, that's another conversation. And how well trained are the staff, and even if they are well trained, how well do they follow the training they've received? I mean, those are all sorts of other issues. For the moment, I still want to concentrate on the individual in the midst of this situation, who may at some point express a wish to find out about different religions, but should not be coerced or encouraged to do so, in my opinion, because it's secondary to being there and trying to figure out how to be the best, how to be or become the best individual they can be. Spirituality is one of the approaches, but it is not. Even as grantedly unconventional, but even as a minister myself, I have to concede it is not the only way to address the situation.
No.
There's a whole person involved here, and a lot of people coming into the correctional system are not Christian.
Yeah, a lot. Most of them are nominally Christian.
Okay.
I mean, like the average person on the street, you ask them, what's your religion? And they'll go, oh, Christian. They won't even say Lutheran or Baptist.
And they may not even go to church.
Exactly. Their default position, from what they even understand, is, oh, I guess I'm Christian. And so many of them, that's where they came from. They don't have a spirituality.
Yeah, but that the predominance of that response doesn't justify an assumption made by the staff. And so, if you're even going to address that, not being part of the system, my guess is that at some point they would be asked, do you want to see a chaplain?
When they come in, when they are brought into the system and diagnosed, okay? What level is their crime, associative factors, what programming do they need to be taking or were adjudicated to take. So all of these things. What would be
helpful to their rehabilitation?
Right. But one of the things that's asked is, do you profess a religion? Okay, and then that box is checked off. And then that just sort of becomes background noise. There will be programs available in the facilities of varying kinds. There's generally a basic Protestant service. There are intermittently Catholic services. There are Jewish services available. Each of the faiths, there are Islamic services available. But it's very much...
Which leads to the loaded question, are there pagan services available?
Yes, there are pagan services available. And there are only currently 2 pagan chaplains in the system, myself and my partner.
Out of how many ballpark figure?
Ballpark figure. There's 30 facilities. There's roughly 2 chaplains per facility, 60-ish chaplains. Okay, and we, the 2 of us, are non-Christian.
So we're talking about 1 to 2% of the whole system.
Yeah.
As far as staffing.
But there is no Jewish chaplain, there is no Muslim chaplain
at
the current time. So if anybody out there would like to get involved, we do need Muslim and Jewish chaplains and Buddhist chaplains. There is 1 Catholic chaplain who is part-time at 1 facility. So the other facilities have to deal with a volunteer chaplain who comes in once or twice a month to address their spiritual needs. They don't get Mass every Sunday. No, they don't.
Well, and the basic point of all this is to recognize that human beings do have spiritual needs.
And when they get inside, it's interesting because I talk with inmates about this all the time. The ones who are beginning to question the choices they made and why they made them and where all of that came from. And that's when they begin to ask, what about God? What about, support? What about choices?
Where does the divine fit in my life?
In my life. And I say, you can see yourself as being in a monastery now.
Okay.
This is the perfect time for you and you to sit down together and say, okay, what do I believe? Why do I believe it? What is my ethic? Do I have one? Where do I want to go with that? Because
do I have adequate self-discipline to serve my own growth?
all of those questions. This is the place where you can do it. There's no distraction, unless you choose to have it be. I mean, you don't have to choose what you're going to wear. You don't have to choose what you're going to do or what you're going to eat or when you're going to bed. Nope.
It's a very structured, in a sense, supportive environment.
Exactly. If you look at it that way, it's a supportive environment for you to clear away everything except who am I?
Okay.
What matters to me? What is my truth? Was I raised with a truth? Was I raised with an ethic?
Well, and also the question, am I in here legitimately or am I in here because my attorney made a mistake?
Well, and that's one of the big ones, because initially everybody is innocent. But at some point the ones...
And some of them are.
And some of them are. Very few, as a matter of fact. Frequently they are not guilty of the crime they were sentenced to because it was pled down.
Okay.
All right? So they're doing other time on a slightly different charge than the one they were first brought on. But that's irrelevant. The point is, at some point in our lives, all of us have to say, you know, I'm not perfect. I have made bad choices. I need to own my bad choices. And then I need to ask myself, how do I do that better and differently?
Yeah. And even for those very few who are innocent, to say, you know, you can complain about the world not being ideal. The point is, this is where I am right now.
And what am I doing with it?
And what am I going to do with it? Right. I can live in the shadow of this the rest of my life, or I can say, doggone it, stroke of bad luck, where do I go from here?
That's right. This is my chance to regroup. This is my opportunity to say, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up? And re-examine everything, all of it. Starting with very basic choices. There are no insignificant choices. Like I tell some of these guys, you start with the thing that got you here, for whatever reason it got you here. What was the choice before that? And the choice just before that? And this choice back here that you thought, you know, that doesn't matter. I'll do this one. It's okay. And that one led to...
And little things grow to be big things.
There are no choices that are insignificant. There's no point when you let someone else choose for you. I know a guy who
Even when you say you do.
Even when, yes. I know a guy who's doing 60 years.
Okay.
Okay, on felony murder. Felony murder means he didn't pull the gun, he didn't fire, he didn't kill anybody. But he was involved in the crime where that happened.
Okay.
And when the guys all said, let's go knock over the 7-Eleven or whatever, he, sitting in the back seat and feeling, I don't really want to do this. But if I do this, if I leave, they're going to think I'm not cool. Not cool. He's doing 60 years to be cool. Choices. And not listening to his own ethic. His own little voice said, you know, I don't really want to do this. But he did it anyway.
Even if you don't understand what the choice is, I like to think everyone has something deep inside of them that will tell them when it doesn't feel right to be where I am.
That's right.
And to be willing to listen to that, you know, if you're sitting in the escape car, and to be willing to listen to that and say, you know, it doesn't feel right to be where I am, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yep.
You know,
and
even
I don't
if it's
care.
just to get out of the car and walk away and walk 2 blocks in one direction, think about what I'm doing and walk back and see if they're still here or what happened. You know, just, I don't feel right where I am, so the one thing I know is that I need to somehow move myself to some other location.
That's right.
And to do
that
even that
simple
much,
of a choice.
Even that much.
Yeah. But too many people in our culture don't validate themselves. Someone else's opinion is more valuable than mine. Someone else's viewpoint of life is more real than mine.
Which to me inspires the question, be careful what you ask for. If you're abdicating choices to others, the way they got into the correctional system is the extreme of someone making the choices for them.
That's right. And the thing they need to understand is that choosing not to choose, or choosing to let someone else choose for you, is still your choice.
Mm-hmm. And if you make the choices earlier in the process,
Right.
you won't wind up in a courtroom having someone make choices for you that by that point are out of your hands.
That's right. You got to that place from back here where you didn't listen to the voice inside that said, no, let's not do this.
But going back to the individual in the system, and the little choices, and, however I got here, here's where I am, or if you say, I've never heard this before, the idea of looking at it as being in a monastery, that it's a supportive environment where you can do whatever reflection you want, whatever journaling you want, whatever, whatever self-development you want. But in order to make it constructive, you have to be absolutely honest with yourself about whatever you might have contributed to this. And in the same note, what you can now contribute to it. Whether to use the time valuably and
That's
productively,
right.
or whether to simply sit there twiddling your thumbs waiting for the last day.
Don't just pass the time. Do the time, and doing the time means utilizing the time. And that's the big challenge for everyone. It's the challenge for people on the outside. I have had more than one inmate tell me, the best thing that ever happened to me was coming to prison, because I was on the fast track and it was going downhill on skids. And now I can take a step back and look at my situation before now.
So it could serve as a wake-up call.
Absolutely.
Well, all of which it sounds like we're able to put this in a more positive light, which I think is wonderful. At the same time, being honest about the negative circumstances that happen. I'm kind of down on painting the whole world positive, because I think we begin to lose. It's like going skiing when the light's flat, as they say. There's no shadow, and you can't see the contours, and you wind up more than likely falling because you can't see
and the mogul
contours.
eats you. Yeah.
The mogul gets you. We need the light and the shadow in order to see what the contours are.
Absolutely.
So we can't be positive all the time, but to take whatever negative thing that's happened and to respond to it as proactively as possible so that good can come out of it.
Right.
The problem that remains is that you've just accomplished this step of personal growth, and it's so wonderful. You get to restart your life, and you get out, and guess what hits you right in the face?
Reality. And the recession. And it's it's not easy for them on a regular situation.
There may be situations where the recession isn't so much the factor, but I'm thinking in terms of you now have to report that you were incarcerated everywhere you go.
There'll be an interview, and the interviewer will ask you, or it will be on the application form, have you ever... And you have to say yes, and you have to tell them the truth.
Because if you don't...
then they will and can find that out, and you will get fired. And then your PO will revoke your parole and send you back.
It's much more serious than just losing the job.
That's right. It's much more serious than just losing the job. And yet the number of places who will even consider hiring someone who is on parole
is minimal?
It's worse than minimal.
Minimal to non-existent.
Practically non-existent. There's handfuls of resources.
Is there any distinction made for what the, for lack of a better word, crime was?
There should be, but very little of that actually comes in. Too many people hiring will simply say, have you done time? The answer is yes, and you're out the door. It's not this. This is
ask whether it was shoplifting or what.
Right, exactly. And they don't, this is a car parts place, and we don't care that you did computer money crime. Okay, we're going to have you selling car parts. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's irrelevant.
Exactly. And that's the bind, the double bind that they have when they come out.
And they may have accomplished a step of personal growth and come out a better person. But we've just said, when you're in the system, the most important thing is to be honest with yourself. And now we're reintroducing them to a world that
Doesn't value honesty.
doesn't value honesty and in many ways punishes it. I cannot
Yes.
tell you how many times I have been encouraged to lie on job applications because, well, in my case, I keep getting the excuse that I'm overqualified.
Yeah.
I finally started answering, I was born overqualified. I still have to pay my bills.
Yeah.
You know, we have an economic system, a societal system that is not intelligent when it comes to honesty, interrelationship, that you cannot send someone a bill if you didn't give them a way to earn the money to pay the bill. I mean, it's like we're creating a population that cannot be employed, cannot be housed, cannot be anything, because our system doesn't allow these people to exist. But they do. And they're real people.
And they're not going away, and there is no away.
And it's not us and them.
No, it's just us.
Yeah. I mean, at any point, any of us could become
That's right.
one of them.
And people need to think about that, and not just now. Well, I don't do things like that. No.
And when I would never. And,
Never.
well,
Okay, now think back when you were 17. Most people doing time now committed their crime somewhere between the ages of 17 and 27.
okay.
That's the window. Think about your own thought processes, choice-making skills,
And maybe
associations.
Yeah, and maybe you were lucky and didn't get caught.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean you're any more innocent than them.
Right. And we need to remember that as a culture.
What's the basic phrase? There but for the grace
There
of
but
God.
for the
go
grace. Exactly.
On. Go on.
And we need to remember that. All of us need to remember that. They are not them. They're us.
And we're all a part of each other.
And they're
Everything
all...
is so interdependent and interconnected, it makes
Absolutely.
no sense to treat someone badly because that's, I mean, it goes back to the golden rule, which you will find a form of that
in every great
in every religion.
Yes.
Whatever you want people to do to you, do to them.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't want them to do it to you, don't do it to them.
Well, and another way that I thought about that more recently was to create a system that will do for the person in need what you would want the system to do for you if you ever do experience that need.
Yes. And consider all of them as your relations in some form.
Well, everybody has people in their family tree that.
Yeah, the black sheep, you know, there's cousin so-and-so.
Yeah.
Well,
What
and
if-
cousin so-and-so just got caught and you didn't.
Yeah. And what if everybody in your family considered you the black sheep?
And some of them do.
Well, and not to digress too much, but, you know, coming back to the point of being specifically a Wiccan chaplain, the person who is considered a black sheep in their family because the family was some version of Christian and they chose to be Wiccan. Because to them, it was a spiritual system that made more sense.
That's right.
And that was more helpful to them.
And among Wiccans, there is a term called coming home. It feels like, oh, this is so familiar. I know this from somewhere. It just feels right.
But they may be ostracized by their family.
Exactly. But that, because it feels right, they stay with it. But oddly, most Wiccans in prison did not come in listed as Wiccan.
Okay.
They mostly came in listed as some vague sort of Christian.
Were they afraid of being...
No, they had never even heard of it. Most Wiccans in prison found Wicca in prison.
Oh, really?
And they found it because there are books floating around in population. They're in the libraries too, but just, I've got this book, I'm leaving, I'm giving it to you. Is that legal? No, but it happens. And they find a handful of books that made them go, you know, I've tried on this religion and that religion and the other one, and none of them fit. And I think this one might work.
Okay. I was going to say, watching this show, I imagine there'd be some conservative Christians who run right out and try to find all those copies and get rid of them. You know, but I would encourage the viewing audience to think not in terms of which religion or of, you know, everyone should be like us.
But finding a spiritual truth that resonates.
A spiritual truth that resonates, a spiritual truth that will work.
Right.
That will create an empowering human-divine relationship. You know, to me, God is God, and nothing we say one way or the other is going to change
That. Exactly.
We may perceive masculine or feminine qualities. We may perceive no human qualities whatsoever. The point is not the point to me is not in what form God chooses to reveal God's self to you, but the fact that there is a human-divine relationship that is empowering, that gives you a way of relating to yourself and to the world in a way that empowers life, that makes it loving and honest and truthful and manageable.
All of the great religions at one point in time or another have said, God is love. Now, do they act that way? Unfortunately, no. But
We wish.
that is the truth.
Mhm.
God is love. And the place
God
that
is love,
starts,
and human is clearly not love by nature.
that starts
but we're
with
trying.
love for yourself.
Yeah.
Caring enough about yourself to not make stupid choices.
Well, and in that solace of being incarcerated and doing the self-reflection, discovering who you are, but I believe in order to complete that, you also have to understand that you exist in relationship. There is an I, but the I is inseparably connected with everything around it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to put as much wisdom and love into those relationships as you can in order to have all the good qualities we associate with the divine come into your life.
And recognize that that is not static. It's not something, well, got there, done, now I can coast on autopilot.
No.
No. It's a living...
It's a relationship.
Yes.
It's
and
a relationship.
And a relationship is living.
It's not even a recipe.
No.
It's not a recipe, it's not a process, it's not a series of steps. It is a relationship.
And it's ongoing and evolving. And as each of us becomes, the relationship becomes.
And that's where I tell people, if you want answers, go ask God. And let God give you the answers that work for you.
And that's who that voice was that said, you know, let's not do this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very
that's
much so.
what needs to be listened to. And in prison, you actually get a chance to sit down and talk to yourself and talk to God and listen for the
And
answers.
really listen. Really, really listen like you've never listened before.
Yes. It has been said that...
Thank you
Okay.
so much. We are just
Out
out
of
of
time, okay.
We'll have to have another discussion another time, but I really thank you for everything you've shared today.
Thank you, sister. Thank you for the work you do.
And blessed